Hi, welcome to the fourth geographygeek.co.uk free masterclass for the NEA Geography. So far we have looked at choosing a title, laying out the project and writing the introduction. And today we're going to have a look at how you can ace the methodology. So let's have a look at what a methodology has in it. So a methodology should be detailed enough to allow anybody to go out and copy your research. The idea behind this being academic research is there to be tested and to be built upon, and you want somebody else to be able to go out and do your exact project. So you've got to write the method in loads of detail. Now, what we found in my school in the past is that method tables do not work very well for A Level. It's really hard to give people sufficient grades. The higher grades we find come from where people actually write out their methodology. But in order to do that, you've got to be really careful and do it with decent headings. Here are the things that you need to have in your method. You need a map of sites. If I'm going to go out and copy your study, I need to stand exactly where you stood. And there should be no guesswork in that. You should tell me exactly where to stand. You need to talk about sampling strategies. So how did you choose the sites that you went to? If you visited particular locations, how did you choose them? It shouldn't just be, well, I went there because I knew I was going to get some good results. That's not sampling. Sampling's got to be something whereby it's tried and tested. It's a way that you're doing it without any bias. So common types of sampling might be systematic sampling. And with systematic sampling, you might take every 5 metres or every 10 metres. You could have stratified sampling where you would put things into layers. So you might choose a residential street. You might choose a street with shops. You might choose a street that's got lots of businesses on it. And therefore you are choosing layers. Or you might have random sampling, and random sampling should actually be random. So with random sampling, for example, if you put a grid of squares on top of a map and these squares are labelled 1 to 100, you can use a random number generator online to tell you which number squares you're going to visit. So that would be truly random. You've got to have a range of primary and secondary data. So some things that you found out yourself, which would be the primary, and some things where you're using other people's data, so that would be secondary. And really importantly, you need to think about ethical dimensions. Now, ethical dimensions really is about people and the environment. How are you going to make sure that people are on board with what you're doing and you're not harming them in any way, or you're not invading their privacy or upsetting them? And similarly, how are you going to make sure that you're not damaging the environment? Are you going to, for example, take a bus to the site? Because that could be something that you could talk about. And then most people do a risk assessment as well, although technically that doesn't appear in the mark scheme. It just is given marks as part of the overall quality. Now I'm going to show you an example of part of a method, but I'm not going to show you the whole method. So let me just get that on the screen now. So this student has set out this methodology quite nicely. It's got a heading, and so it sets up what we're going to see. We're already expecting certain things. And then the data is laid out by key question. So I can see clearly key question 1 has got one method to go with it. Actually, there are 2 methods for each of the key questions in this project. And there's some things in here that are going to hit the marks, and that's what we want to do. We want to be hitting that mark scheme, to be strategic about it. He's given actual dates and times of when he went out. So that's great. I can go around about the same time, although I can't go back in time, so I can't do the same year. Clearly. He's talked about sampling. He's used systematic sampling, and he said how it was systematic. And really importantly, he said why he did systematic. And you will get marks for that, so that's really good. He has given me a map of sites, so I know exactly where he went, and that's great. Now, I've not given you the whole method here because I don't think it's appropriate to do so, but then he goes on to explain exactly how he would do that method. And then I'm just going to give you a taster of the risk assessment and ethical issues that he's put in. But again, I've taken chunks of it out, so it was more detailed than this. So he's talking about risks, and at the time it was 2020, so it was COVID-19 pandemic. He's talking about the questionnaire and whether people would feel comfortable in public, especially with COVID. And he's talking about people's security. And he's done a risk assessment for himself at the bottom as well to identify some of the main risks. So the methodology just needs to be really clear. It needs to be laid out really carefully. And most importantly, the detail is what is going to get you the marks. Think about it. Could somebody else go out, could your best mate go out and copy the study that you're doing? If they couldn't, well, it's not in enough detail and you need to go back and revisit it. That's all there is for the method for now. If you've got any questions, feel free to get in touch. I know some of you are doing that, and that's absolutely fine. Next session, next week, we are going to look at data presentation techniques.